am the PC expert amateur, and we're going to put together a monitor and connect it to the computer. My niece's monitor is the Dell S2721HS 27-inch monitor. So aside from the monitor piece, there's this part, which looks like a club that you would beat an overeager salesperson with. And then there's this part that looks like maybe it's you can put a fruit on there and just display it or something like that. And then there are a couple of cables. There's the HDMI cable and the power, the HDMI cable and the power supply cable. So that's really it. So what we're going to do first is, if you have never done something like this, you're going to look at the instructions. I've done things like this before, a few times, so I understand already what to do. This is the base. You put that down on top of your desk. And this is not a club. Do not use it as a club. I did not recommend it, and I am not even gonna defend you if you try to do it. So if you look right there, you can see that matches that. So very simply, oh no, the lights are out. You're going to take this, put it like that. See, there's actually guides in there to make sure you don't do it wrong. If you can't put it on like this, it won't fit. It has to be this way. And then underneath, there is this screw. Now you can either use a flathead screwdriver, or it's got a nifty thing that allows you to do it by hand. I have no idea what it's called. I don't think I've actually ever seen that kind before, but you're going to hand turn it until it's tight. Do not overturn it or you will wreck that piece of metal. It is not particularly strong. It was already starting to bend when I was when I had it tight. All right. Now this is the part that is going to be holding the monitor in place. And here is the monitor. Now in the old days we had boom boxes that were like almost this big, and people would go around with like 20 million D batteries in them, and they'd have them on their shoulder and they'd be listening to the music to be cool. I thought it was kind of silly really, but they thought they were cool, so you know, that's their choice, and I'm not going to hold it against them for being silly. And if you look at the back, this square here plugs into this indentation there. Now you can do this in a couple of different ways, but you can either put it down on a flat surface, but personally, since I'm sitting like this, it's going to be easiest for me to show you by doing it this way. So these two tabs are going to go into these holes, which actually this is the top of the monitor here, this is the bottom. And so we slide the two tabs into the two holes. What a relief. And just pull forward, and now it is attached. Now you can turn it back around, and if you look there, if you look there, you'll see that on this side we have some ports for connecting to the computer, and on that side we have the power port. So we're going to put that out of the way for a minute. We're going to take our cables, and we're going to plug this power cable in on the power cable side. And since this is in the way, I'm just going to slide that around there. And it's a 3-prong, so you do need to pay attention to where the single prong is. Just push that in there. You can do it with it sitting on top of your desk, but it's awkward then because you can't really see. So it's better to either lay it down flat or hold it in your lap like this, because now I've got full control over it. There's no way it's going to fall unless I go like this, and then I can catch it. And it's not going to slide around where I'm plugging this stuff in, whereas if it's on a flat surface that's slippery, it can slide around. very awkward doing it with the monitor standing up on the desk. Now there are some monitors that will come with additional ports. So this has got one HDMI port and one display port. It's also got a what looks to be a sound port. Yeah. Oh no, not a sound port. That is well, it is. It's sound out, I think, or maybe it's display. You know what? I forgot. I'm gonna have to look. Where is that little book? So there's the big piece of paper with all the instructions non-verbally, and now this one allows you to do different adjustments. It can go 90 degrees. So let's see, and you can download the instructions and stuff from the various websites depending on which model you've got. Let's see, but it doesn't actually. It doesn't show it. Anyways, there is a what looks like an RCA jack here. Not sure exactly what to do with that. It could be an output port. Anyways, not gonna worry about it. It comes with an HDMI cable. Why? Well, just ask Dell why they didn't provide a display port cable too. And we're gonna just push that in there. Don't push too hard. You don't want to break it. Just push it until it's fully in. And then you are pretty much done, with the exception of the fact that how high should it be? Which is to say, I don't mean drug high, I mean like height. How high? So I gotta move my water out of the way so I don't make a gigantic disaster happen. So a lot of these that are designed to stand up like this, all you gotta do to adjust the height is to push or to pull. So you have one hand on the bottom or on the top, the other hand on here, and you can push it down and you can adjust it very, very easily. In fact, you can do it when you are sitting as well. If they have done a good job of making it, just hold on to the base so it doesn't go trying to fall over or something. Right, so now what you want to do is you want to get it, if possible, to the height so that the middle of the screen is at the level of your eyes. Now, I'm tall, so that's not particularly easy for me. You can buy a stand to put the monitor on top of and things can slide underneath it. Or you can just be happy with the fact that, oh, it's pretty tall. But, don't have it way down here, because if you can see over the top of it, it's too short, and that means you're going to be looking down all the time. And looking down all the time is bad for your neck. You can actually cause damage over a long period of time to the vertebrae in your neck. That can result in the uneven wear of the cartilage between the vertebrae, as well as getting a pinched nerve, which can lead to pain radiating down the arm along the outside. It can cause tingling and numbness in the fingertips, and when it gets really bad, your whole arm starts to feel like it's in pain, and it's not pleasant. It's treatable without surgery, just by minding your posture, making sure your neck and head are properly supported when you're sleeping, and not doing all like this all the time with your mobile device, and so on. So that's pretty much it. I've got my mouse connected already, but I wanted to explain to you, because these days a lot of computers come with many different connection ports for USB, and you may be looking at them and you may be thinking, well, gosh, there are like a cajillion different ports here. Which one should I plug it into? So I'm going to show you for all three of these. So I'm actually unplugging the mouse, which I borrowed from my son. Now, I'm going to have to figure a way to show you this and actually see what I'm doing. So first of all, I'm going to move this keyboard out of the way, and I'm going to put the monitor up here temporarily while I put you on pause. Alright, so we're ready to continue. I've got the monitor plugged in, as you can see, and in order, now, you don't actually have to have the computer off in order to plug in a monitor, because unless you've got some really cheap piece of garbage from China that was not designed correctly, the power, or not power, the cable that feeds data to the monitor is hot swappable, which means you can plug it in and remove it when the power's on or off. So we're going to go over here and we're going to plug it in. And as you can see here, we're going to go plug it in down here, and you can see that there's only one display port, which is the one on here, and there's one HDMI, which is this one here. So we're just going to plug that in. And it's scanning for a signal, but it's not finding it yet because I haven't plugged in the keyboard and mouse, and then I will turn it on. Now, technically, you don't have to have the power off for plugging in a keyboard or mouse either that's using USB, because those are also hot swappable. But, you know, if you notice, there are lots of USB ports here. There's, on the top row, there are 4, then there are 2 more that are blue, and then there's one that's USB-C, and then there are 2 more that are blue. So which ones should you use? Well, it depends on what you're plugging in. If you're plugging in something that really needs high speed, then you're going to use the blue ones. Or if you see one that has like a high speed indicator, then you would use that one. But if you have one that's got a C connector, which is that white one there, you would use that. If you're going to do something that's relatively slow, like a mouse or a keyboard, you're going to plug them into the black ones, because those are the slowest ports. You don't want to use the good ports, the fast ports, for slow things like mice and keyboards. When I say slow, it's really that they don't send a lot of data at one time, so they don't need anything fast. Now all you gotta do is make sure that that white filler there is on the opposite side from the black filler inside of the socket. Plug it in, and let's turn it on and see what happens, okay? So turned on the power supply, turned on the computer, and here we go. Let the magic begin. Oh wait, am I like stealing somebody's logo or something? Or not logo, slogan? I sure hope not. Nothing's going on here. Well, that is not encouraging, because it should have shown us all kinds of stuff. There it is. Okay, so now you're going to get this message when you first start up your computer. USB devices total: 0 drive, 3 keyboards, 2 mice, 4 hubs. Huh. Well, I'm not quite sure why it's saying that. Now, so it also, fortunately, has recognized both of our M2 SSDs, the Neo Forza and the Nextorage. It has also recognized that there's the Asus optical drive plugged in, which is a read-write drive. And it says there's a new CPU installed. So please enter setup to configure your system. Press F1 to continue and take advantage of Asus optimized performance. Oh, by the way, if you want to, you can actually configure the color scheme of this to make sure that it's right, but I'm not going to be demonstrating that. All right, let's press F1. And there's BIOS. And this, let's get the keyboard so it's easier on me. And I've got the mouse. Now, one of the first things that you want to do is you want to turn on XMP. I forgot the name of the one for AMD computers, but for Intel, you're going to turn this on. And you do need to, there we go. It's going to automatically set it to something, and you will need to verify that it actually is correct. And you want to have that off, because if you turn this on, it's going to take one of your storage drives and turn it into a RAID storage drive, which means it'll be used for backing everything up. And that, if you only have one drive, then you will not be able to install an operating system. All right, so let's see here. We've got the motherboard, we've got the CPU, the speed that it's running at, the amount of memory, so that's 64 gigabytes, DDR4 2133. Now this is these two DRAMs of memory are actually 3600 megahertz or more, so we need to get that bumped up to the correct speed, which is why we're enabling this, and we'll want to go in and correct that. So, and then up here you can control the LEDs with this. You can decide whether you want all the LEDs on the motherboard and also anything connected to the motherboard on or off, or you only want Aura LEDs on, or you only want functional LEDs on. You will have to play with it to find out which is which, so you can get the right settings going. Click on it. I'm going to leave it on all on. Even though my niece is not going to need that because she didn't want that kind of lighting in her computer. And then you're going to want to turn on, make sure that our resize bar is turned on, especially if you have an Asus. Well, actually, it doesn't really matter for both Asus and NVIDIA, not Asus, I'm sorry, AMD and NVIDIA graphics cards. You'll want resize bar on. Additionally, I'm not sure about the Intel Arc cards, whether they need the bar turned on or off. I'm sorry about that. Now, this is the basic screen. And if you want to be able to do advanced work, you're going to have to go into the advanced screen. But before we do that, we're going to look at the QFan control. Now, different manufacturers of motherboards have different control systems. They don't all call it QFan, but this gives you control over your various headers on the screen, on the motherboard. So we've got the AL pump, we've got the CPU fan, and you'll notice that if you remember from previous videos where I showed you the headers, there aren't two CPU fan headers here, like CPU fan 1 and CPU fan 2. They get combined into one in the controls here. Now, I think that some software that you can use can both override the BIOS fan curve and also distinctly control the fans. But this is the fan or fans that deal with keeping the CPU cool. And you can set it to one of the presets, standard, silent, turbo, and come on, there we go, full speed. Or you can make your own fan curve. Now, it depends on how quiet you want your computer to be. Some people are very, very sensitive about noise. And so you can see along the bottom axis here, this is temperature, and these on the left side here, this axis is how fast the fans are going to be spinning. And these points here, and you can add points when you use the manual one, I believe, are points where it changes. So at this position, which is 20%, and let's see, this is 20 degrees. At 20 degrees, until 20 degrees, the fans will be at 20%. So from 0 to 20 degrees, they'll run at 20% of their maximum. After it hits 20 degrees, they will ramp up to 40% until they get to 45 degrees. At 45 degrees, the fans will ramp up again to, let's see, total of 70% of the maximum RPMs. And then from there, when it gets to 60 degrees, it'll ramp up all the way to maximum at 100%. Now, if you have CPU fans that are 2 or 3 pin, you'll want to set it to DC mode. However, if you have the 4-pin fans and the headers are 4-pin, you'll want to use PWM mode. If the headers are 2 or 3 pin, same thing, you're going to want to use DC mode. So if the headers or the fans are 2 or 3 pin, or 2 or 3 wire, that is, then you need to use DC mode. But if it's a 4-pin and a 4-pin header, use PWM mode. Right, and you can go through individually and make changes. So like, you'll have to pay attention to what you've plugged into where to make sure that you are correctly controlling things. So I've got the CPU fans plugged in on the top of the motherboard, and then I've got some fans on channel 1, which is in the middle of the motherboard. And then I've got fans on channel, I think it's channel 2, which is on the side of the motherboard. I don't have anything plugged into channels 3 and 4 at this time. So channel 1 is handling the 2 exhaust, or the 3 exhaust, or wait, no, 2 exhaust. This one and this one. And then the channel 2 is handling the 3 intake fans, which is the front one here and the 2 on the front of the computer. So you can set them differently to make sure that enough air is being pulled in and enough air is flowing out in a correct proportion. Now, generally speaking, with most cases, the cases are designed for what's called positive pressure. Positive pressure means that there's more air flowing in than flowing out. And that means that all the air that's coming in is coming in only from where the fans are pulling it in. If you have negative pressure, that means there's air flowing out faster than the intake fans can pump in. In that case, the fans are going to cause air to flow in through every other nook and cranny, every ventilation hole that is not covered. So if you're using negative pressure and you want to avoid having a ton of dust in your computer, you're going to want to cover up all those vents if you can, but you have to pay attention to what consequences that might have. So you can set these to different. Now, generally speaking, intake fans are behind filters for dust. There may be 1 filter, there may be 2, hopefully no more than that. And you're going to want to, because of that, make sure that the intake fans are pulling harder than the output or the exhaust fans are. So now again, I have my intake fans on channel 2 fan header. So I want to turn that into turbo so it goes a bit faster. And then the exhaust fans are going to stay on standard because they really don't need to be as powerful as the intake fans. And actually, I'm going to check the specifications on the intake and exhaust fans because they are not the same. And I'm going to decide whether I want to switch channel 2 to turbo instead of standard, because if the front fans are as weak as I remember them to be, I'm really going to have to ramp them up to make sure that, not the front fans, the front fan here. Those other two on the front, I'm so sorry. The other two on the front I forgot are on their own independent system, so I don't have control except for the manual switches that are behind the door. So I'm going to put you on pause for a minute while I check that information. Okay, so I checked, and the two fans in the front are very weak, and so that's why I have that third fan, the Antec fan, on the top there in the front underneath the stand on intake as well. So I'm actually going to set that to turbo to make sure that it's pulling enough in. If I set it to full speed, it's going to be a bit noisy. So I'm going to leave it at turbo. Come on. There we go. And then the rear fans, I'll just leave them on standard for now. All right, so when you're done setting the fan curves, now if you want to like decrease it even further, you could go into here, like I said, and you can say, well, let's see, I don't want the exhaust fans pulling out too much, so I'm going to slide this one down here. And like that, you can do that, but I'm just going to leave it on standard. It should be enough. Connect. Click apply. And at this point, it's giving you the option to select which or all of the 4 fan headers, except for the CPU cooler, you want that setting to be applied to. Now, I'm only applying it to channel 1 fans because those are the exhaust fans. So we're going to leave that as okay. And then channel 2, we want to make sure that's still on turbo, so we're going to apply that. Leave and put that on okay. Then we're going to escape. All right, I don't do a lot of stuff in BIOS, so I'm not an expert, and I definitely recommend that you look at comprehensive resources. But when you want, on Asus at least, when you want to switch from the the basic version to the advanced, and this is the system data information, which I don't need to set. Let me see here. Yeah, well, okay, I do need to set it. Oops. So we'll have that to 10, 53. And that should do it. Now, if you want to change the language, that's for that. If you want to search for something because you're having trouble finding it, because sometimes they don't organize it in an easy to understand way. Sometimes the terms they use are very confusing. So if you want to be able to really work in the BIOS and effectively make changes, you're going to have to do research. And so we're going to press F7. Because that's what they use for switching to the advanced mode. And the AI tweaker allows you to customize this. So I can switch XMP1. Come on. Man, my son's mouse is all beat to crap. There we go. Or we can go to XMP2. Now, if you notice, the settings are 18, 22, 22, 42. And 1.35 volts. If we set it to XMP1, it's still the same thing, except, was there a change? Nope, it's all identical at this point. So we'll just leave it on number 1. And if you want to have it the best choice here, unless you know what you're doing, is just to leave it on auto and leave that enabled. most of this is you're not going to change unless you're planning to overclock. So don't bother to mess with that. You want to come down here, make sure that this is set to the 3600 setting, because that's the speed that these that mine run at, or rather these RAM cards run at. You do need to know what it is before you change this. You can try to overclock them, but I'm not talking about overclocking. I'm not an overclocking expert, so I'm not going to try to give you recommendations on that. And then you can so now it should be set up so that the RAM will run at the speed that it's supposed to run at. And again, I'm not going to give you a lot of information about working in BIOS, because it's just not something I'm an expert at, and I'd rather that you look at the documentation and do some research. You can always ask questions, and if I know the answer, I will help you. You can go into the advanced NVMe controller and drive information. Come on. There we go. All right, you can see that actually this is not a section where you can change anything. It just gives you specific information, like the Neo Forza's 1,000 gigabytes or a terabyte. Man, my son has really destroyed this mouse. He's only had it for, what is it, a year now? Maybe 2 years, I forget. All right. Now, here we can look at more detailed information for the Nextorage. You can see it's 2 terabytes. And this gives you some self-test options. You can do a short or extended self-test. If you're concerned, like if you buy a used SSD, you can use this to test it and make sure. But do me a favor, when you plug in an SSD, never have the computer on. And when you remove it, never have the computer on. It should be fully turned off and disconnected. And so you make the choices that you want, controller only or controller and namespace test, and then you run the device self-test. And again, all of this stuff, I'm not going to go through all this and explain it to you, because a lot of this has to do with overclocking and undervolting and things like that, which are not my areas of expertise. However, I will suggest that if your computer's running too hot, that you come in here and change the CPU voltage, to lower it a bit, and keep on dropping it down to the lowest stable position it can be in. So you're going to need to keep track of it so you don't have problems. Also, make sure to save your BIOS settings so that in the event that there's a problem, you can restore those settings, that the last known stable settings, that is. And then you can look at different sensor results. You can find out temperature, fan speed, voltage. The QFan configuration is also accessible here in a different way. So you have a more granular control over the fans in this QFan section than in the graphical one. So you can actually choose at what okay, just like here, step up allows you to adjust the time delay before the fan rotation speed increases. 0 is instant. The higher the level, the slower the change in speed, which may result in less noise, but slower heat dissipation. So it's basically a delay. And the same is true for the step down or slowing down the fan. And the minimum limit, you can change that. And all this other crap. And then here's the pump control. So the header for the pumps, or pump, I should say, on an AIO is down here as well. And generally speaking, for an AIO pump, if you've got one, you're always going to want it at full speed, or you're going to set it at 1 speed. So you do manual. Don't use standard, silent, and turbo. Just do manual. And set it so that it's constantly running at the same speed no matter what the temperature is. and that speed setting should be high, not low or medium. So I would not suggest anything less than, say, 80%, unless you have a really, really weak, well, no, actually, if you have a really weak AIO pump, then you're going to want to have it higher, maybe even only 100%. If you have a very, very strong one, like the one that I have in my computer right now, which is the Thermalright Frozen Knot 360 millimeter, it's got a very strong pump that goes at 5,500 RPMs. You can set that to 80%, possibly even 70%. You would have to do a little experimenting and see what the optimal setting is. And of course, if you have a noisy pump, because some AIOs do, you may also decide to lower it so that it's not quite so noisy. And then we have the boot configuration, which, if you go back to the basic screen, it's all right here. So we're going to choose one and drag the items. Choose one and drag the items. So we're going to use this one here in order to boot from. So we're going to go in here. Oops. Oh, that's right. Once you have, my apologies, once you have the operating system installed, it will recognize that that is a bootable device. So what it's going to be doing is looking for data on your storage devices that are connected and finding any storage devices that actually have the operating system to use. And it will ignore all other storage devices. Only the ones that actually have operating systems on them will be used over here. So you need to do formatting in Windows first. And then finally, when you are in need of updating your BIOS settings, the firmware, you will need to come into this area and use the Asus Easy Flash 3 utility. Other companies have a slightly different way of doing it, but ultimately it all boils down to the same thing. You're going to download the file or files from the company website, and then you're going to put those. Sometimes there's a utility you have to use to change them somewhat. Like with Asus, they have a second program that ME something or other that makes a change in the type of file, and then you transfer that to a USB device, plug it in, restart the computer, go into BIOS, go to the screen tool, go into Asus Easy Flash 3, and then you would select the storage device that has it on there, and you would run that program to make those changes. But we don't have that. Finally, and very, very importantly, once you've made all the changes you need to make, you either press F10 or you press the Exit tab. And then you're going to save changes and reset. If you don't, all of these changes will not be saved. So now it should restart. So we are basically ready to install Windows. And that is all for the creation of this computer for my niece. Thanks so much for watching this series. I appreciate it, and hope you have a wonderful day.